This episode is brought to you by State Farm. From your morning podcast to your afternoon playlist, State Farm knows you personalize your entire day, and that's why State Farm helps you personalize your insurance with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. It offers coverage options that help protect what you care about most at an affordable price just for you. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability and eligibility may vary.
Are negative Google reviews hurting your business? Don't let unfair feedback cost you customers. At Webamax, we specialize in removing false, misleading, and damaging reviews so your online reputation stays strong. Our expert team works quickly and legally to clean up your digital presence, helping you rebuild trust. Visit us on the web at www.gowebamax.com. That's GOWEBIMAX.com, or text us for a free quote at 856-840-8343. Don't let bad reviews define you. Get immediate help from Webamax.
Membership means more with American Express Business Gold. Earn 4 times membership rewards points in your top 2 eligible spending categories every month, including eligible U.S. advertising purchases and select media, and U.S. purchases at restaurants, including takeout and delivery. What are you waiting for? Get the card that flexes with your spending every month. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I am your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast, Dibes. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Dibes, how are you doing today?
Doing well, man. This could be, a huge target for the Philadelphia Eagles. As we all know, I like to add guys in the rotation there on the interior. So we could be talking about the next Philadelphia Eagle. So let's go.
All right. And I am also joined by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ Be sure to check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. And Dive stole my thunder a little bit. What I was going to lead in here and say was one of the players we talk about on this show will be one of the first 3 draft picks by the Eagles in the draft this year. I think they are using, at the very least, a day 2 pick on an interior D lineman. If not, pick 32. If not, trading up for a first round pick. I think one of the top 100 picks of the draft will be an Eagle defensive tackle.
Yeah, and it is a deep class. I ended up walking away from this with 3 first-round grades and 6 second-round grades. There's a lot of guys here that are interesting. We're doing a top 5 interior defensive lineman ranking. There's going to be guys that get left out of this show that are really good players. We'll shout out some in honorable mentions. We'll be able to talk about them during the draft as they come off the board. But we're going to limit it to the top 5 tonight. And so, as we did last week, we will go 5 to 1 and talk about these guys along the way. So I'll lead us off with my number 5. It is TJ Sanders from South Carolina. TJ Sanders was a 2-sport athlete in high school, playing basketball and football. He was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school where he played defensive end and tight end. He redshirted in 2021. was a rotational player in 2022 before becoming a starter in 2023 and then making second team all conference in 2024. He's 6'4", 290 pounds. He's about 21 and a half years old. And among the 11 guys that I watched that are kind of like in the consensus top 100-ish range, he ranked fifth in pass rush win rate, third in pressure rate, second in sack rate, third in run stop rate, and third in overall defensive stop rate. TJ Sanders has an explosiveness with his first step that he uses to shoot gaps or cross the face of offensive linemen. He utilizes a variety of pass rush counter moves to get quick wins in the trenches. He's played all over the defensive line at South Carolina. He's played anywhere from nose tackle all the way out to defensive end. So there's a lot of versatility there. And he's got tremendous upper body strength to stack and shed blocks. Now, that said, he is undersized for an interior guy at 290 pounds, 6'4". He struggles against double teams at times in the run game. And he plays with a poor pad level that magnifies those double team struggles. You can stack on top of that I talked about, he fights with his hands well, but sometimes he stops moving his feet to focus on that hand fighting, and that results in him getting washed out of plays. And even when he gets one-on-one blocks, he doesn't have the power to reset the line of scrimmage like you would like to see interior guys do at times. And so, I think TJ Sanders, I've got a second-round grade on him. I think he fits best as like a pass rush specialist in a penetration-style scheme who has the tools to develop into an every down defender. I would want him rushing from like a 3 technique, a 4-eye technique in an even front early in his career. But I do think there's a lot of potential for him as a run stuffer as well. I think this guy would be a great value in the second round. And so that's why I had him 5th on my board. Ryan is not with us tonight. He also had him 5th, but Mark, Dives, you guys did not have him in your top 5. Dives, where does he fall for you?
He was my original honorable mention until someone else took him, and I didn't expect you guys to be so high on him. I do think there is a world he could be a first-round pick, late first-round pick, but I agree with everything you just said. I think he's a round 2 guy, and all the other guys on my list, top 5, are, I think, first-round talent.
All right. Mark, anything you want to add in on TJ Sanders before we get to your number 5?
I think that was a great scouting report. I think you nailed anything I would talk about him on. But I would say for me, he would be tied with my honorable mention guy. Like I have about 3 D tackles, 6 through 8, pretty much exactly even. It comes down to personal preference, pretty much.
All right. So there you have it, TJ Sanders. Mark, let's get into your number 5. So you have Kenneth Grant, number 5. I have him at number 4. Dibes and Ryan both have him at number 3. So we'll give you first crack at him, and then we'll let Dibes fill in any gaps.
No, I think Dibes will definitely need to fill in a lot of gaps here. This is not a guy that I've studied like deeply, to be quite honest. I definitely need to look into a little bit more of his stuff. The famous play with him that everybody's going to bring up is the Penn State play. I think it was Katron Allen. I think it was Allen, not Singleton. Broke free in the open field against Michigan, and Grant chased him from behind. Unbelievable play, and shows his motor, shows just how hard he plays until the end of the whistle, which you cannot take anything away from him in that respect. I think that there's something to be said for the fact that Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham played next to each other. I think it helped each other out a ton. I don't think that any of these other D tackles played with, anyone on the same planet as either of these two guys. So I do think that there's part of me that is pushing back a little bit. I think both guys are just a little overinflated. I think both guys are, I'm not going to say that they're bad pass rushers, because I think they have the traits. There are the flashes of it. Both guys, I think, have 8 sacks in 2 years. I don't think that they are, Jalen Carter from the inside necessarily in terms of a pass rusher from the D tackle position. And very few are. They are both going to be really good players, but I don't think that they are, game wreckers from the pass rush. They're both excellent in the run game. And you could go see that for yourself in the Ohio State game this year, with an Ohio State team that ran all over everybody but couldn't get anything going in terms of running on the ground against those two Michigan guys up front. But I would say I want to pitch that to you guys and see if that factors in at all in your evaluations of those two guys. I think there's a lot of guys on. I think I often kind of gravitate towards some defensive line guys on bad teams sometimes because a lot of the times I feel like I'm watching those guys get focused on so heavily. Is there something to be said that it was kind of hard to double these guys and focus on either one of them with the other one right next to it?
Ask Milton Williams, because he's about to get a huge payday, and he's good. He's not as good as he looked this year with Jalen Carter drawing all the attention. So there's certainly something to be said for stacking two of those guys next to each other. Which again we got a question here from Davey. Will interior defensive line be our first position drafted? The Eagles are always going to go BPA with a focus on the trenches, but I would love for it to be a defensive tackle because they would get all the opportunity in the world rushing opposite Jalen Carter.
Yeah,
I have a feeling. Yeah.
I think Kenneth Grant has a really high floor. A draft where there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of variance in this draft, especially at the top, like 4 or 5. It's a crapshoot. I'm not including quarterbacks in that list. I think Kenneth Grant is very much a first-round talent. He's a brick house. I think he moves really well, like Mark alluded to. You saw the clip of him chasing down that Penn State running back. A lot of physical ability, some upside as a pass rusher. He's got some change of direction skills. He's definitely going to be an A-gap defender in the NFL. I think he's a probably high day 2 guy, if I had to guess. But I wouldn't be shocked to see him get taken in the first round. He's a high floor guy, and that means something in a draft that there's going to be a lot of boom or bust kind of selections. I think some reaches in the first round.
He's got a high floor as a run defender. I just don't really see him being impactful as a pass rusher that much. He pretty much bull rushes, and if that doesn't work, he doesn't have anything else. And it's really hard to just bully an interior offensive line like that in the NFL. I mean, look, see Jordan Davis. And his weight is probably going to be an issue as well. I mean, like we can just throw Jordan Davis alongside of him. Jordan Davis was a tremendous athlete at the same weight. Jordan Davis is 3.5 inches taller. And so Kenneth Grant is huge, and that's probably going to negatively impact his ability to play heavy snap counts. I have a hard time seeing him really getting on the field in any pass rushing situation. So he is a freak athlete who is a great run defender. I just wonder how high he ends up ultimately going. I put a 2nd-round grade on him just because I don't. Wow. I vaulted Jordan Davis up a little higher because of his combine, and he had the 10.0 relative athletic score, and I was like, let's just learn the pass rush moves. And maybe Grant just totally blows that out of the water too.
I think there's a chance.
And he may well do it, but I would not have Jordan Davis as high on a big board now if I was scouting him as I did back then. And maybe it's an overcorrection for me to put a 2nd on him, but I do have him down my board a little bit further.
And it's funny. I thought I was going to be like kind of the one that was lowest on his pass rushing, because I feel like when you go on Twitter, you look at scouts, you look at people talking about this guy, they're talking about him as if he's going to be a huge pass rusher at the next level. And I don't agree with that. I think I actually might be higher on him as a pass rusher than Shane, though, because I think he's a good bit better than Jordan Davis was as a pass rusher coming out of college. So, I mean, 8 sacks in 2 years, not going to blow your socks off, but I'd have to go back and look at what Davis had, to be honest. But yeah. I don't think it was that much sack production. And I don't think it was nearly as much pressure, hurry production. So I'm surprised to hear Shane say he doesn't think he can play at all in pass rush snaps. But, hey, that's kind of why he's lower on my list, because I'm low on the pass rush tools. But I'm surprised I'm surprised to not be lowest on him, I guess is what I should say.
All right. I'm going to look up what Jordan Davis's numbers were from his last year, just for comparison's sake. But while I'm looking that up, I'm going to throw it over to Dibes and let Dibes talk about Derek Harmon, who is 5th for Dibes. He's 4th for Ryan. He's 3rd for Mark, and he's actually 2nd for me. So Dibes, we'll let you take first crack at him. I'm going to pull these numbers while you do it.
I'm shocked that I got Derek Harmon. That makes me excited. All right. He's a guy that I was very high on all throughout the 2024 season. I was a big Oregon guy all year, but Derek Harmon was so underrated all season long. One of the best pass rushing units in college football that didn't get talked about enough. Derek Harmon's a big part of that. He's got amazing versatility. He's a chess piece waiting to happen for any defensive coordinator in the NFL. And that's the selling point, especially for Vic Fangio and Howie Roseman, a guy that can go inside and out. He's got great quickness. He's a gap shooter. He's a penetrator. He's got great length, great hand usage. He can shed blocks at the point of attack. He was dominant in one-on-ones, and he's got some hip tightness. So we'll see how he tests during the upcoming combine. But overall, man, I think this guy is an amazing 3-tech in the NFL. He can play even front. He can play odd front. And I've got a solid round 1 grade on him. I think Derek Harmon's one of the more slept on guys. And it just makes my heart feel so good to hear how high Mark and Shane are on him. Derek Harmon is without a doubt a first-round pick.
All right. Yeah, Mark is pointing up. Go ahead and talk about your boy, Mark.
I was pointing at you to talk about him.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'll talk about him then. So he's one of these weird guys that we can't find an age for. That always drives me crazy. But he's a 4th-year senior, so he's going to be on the older side of prospects. But looking at the pressure rates and things that I mentioned, these are out of the 11 guys that I looked at. He was 2nd in pass rush win rate, 2nd in pressure rate, 6th in sack rate, 9th in run stop rate, and 6th in defensive stop rate. And I just think he's explosive. He has a lot of tools in the toolbox as a pass rusher. I think he has good hand placement in the run game to stack and shed blocks. He's got good length, a strong upper body, so he can anchor against double teams when his hand strikes are right. However, he's more disruptive than he is productive. He doesn't finish rushes well. He takes poor angles to the quarterback. I think he's got some tight hips that compound that problem. He's easily avoided by quarterbacks. So, it's easy for a quarterback to slide in the pocket and make this guy miss, which is still impactful. It's just not finishing the plays. It's also a thing in the run game where he can't really fall back to an adjacent gap to make a play. He'll overrun it because he just isn't agile enough. I think he plays with high pad level at times and gives his chest up to blockers, which is a bigger deal for him than other people, because I do think his lower half isn't maybe as good. It limits his recovering ability. And so, I love this guy. He's the number 2 guy for me. I've got a first-round grade on him. I think he's going to fit best in an even front as a B-gap guy, a 3-tech, 4-eye. Let him be a penetrator, and I think he'll be able to wreak a lot of havoc in the passing game without being a big negative in the run game. I wouldn't say he's great at it, but I think he's adequate to be a 3-down player in the NFL as a rookie. This is the guy. Bring me this guy at 32 for the Eagles, and I'll be doing backflips on stream.
Man, him and Jordan Birch were such a blast to watch every week, man.
I'm right there with you, Shane. I will say one thing that you touched on with the pressures, and he's more disruptive than productive right now. I would agree with that in part. I will say I feel like I saw multiple times this year he push a quarterback into a sack, from to the edge, where he doesn't necessarily get credit for that. Maybe he does on the pressure rate, obviously, but I think this guy is awesome. I think he's a guy who can play every down. I have no qualms about him in the run game, and I think he's going to only get better as a pass rusher. 43 hurries is unbelievable. According to PFF, I also got 55 hurries somewhere else. So pressures, hurries, I feel like those stats are always like a little bit different depending on where you're looking. But
very subjective.
He was first in pressures as a D tackle, but second in pressure rate. So I guess he just played way more snaps than whoever came in first in pressure rate. I also saw he had a higher pressure rate than Mike Green as an edge rusher, which seems crazy because I know Mike Green had a ton of sacks as well. But I just think this guy is an absolute beast, and I think he showed it in big games throughout the whole year. He was the guy I think Shane said, you watched the Boise State game and he jumped off the screen at you. I felt like that was every time I watched Oregon. I was just blown away by Derek Harmon.
Yeah, when you watch like Georgia, it was like Jalen Walker. When you watch Oregon, it was Derek Harmon.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our number 5s. Let's go up to our number 4s. Now, my number 4 was Kenneth Grant, who we already talked about. But Mark, at number 4, you have Walter Nolan, who is 3 for me and 2 for Dibes. So we'll let you lead off with Nolan. What did you see when you watch him?
Yeah, Nolan's a guy who I might end up highest on overall. Maybe not actually with what Dibes says, but as a nose tackle, I mean, he is an unbelievable pass rusher in terms of his being. I think you look at him and you might expect maybe a run stuffer who can't rush the passer, but 13 sacks in 2 years and really, really stepped up from 2023 to 2024. PFF grades, obviously garbage, as Shane can tell you, but 72.5 in 2023, 88.9 in 2024. For whatever we could say with PFF grades, 88.9 is an absurd PFF grade for a guy. So that I think that does show. It's hard to take a lot of problems. 91.6 run defense grade from PFF. Run stop rate way up there. Pass rush win rate way up there. This guy's a beast. I think that, this is just like Derek Harmon would be fine with Walter Nolan coming to Philly as well. I think this guy, no matter where he goes, is going to be an absolute menace. I have him like 12th overall.
Yeah, he is 6th in pass rush win rate, 6th in pressure rate, 3rd in sack rate, 2nd in run stop rate, and 2nd in defensive stop rate. Dibes, you're the highest on him, at least in terms of positional rankings out of all of us at number 2. So what do you love so much about Walter Nolan?
His upside is nuts, man. I feel like I like Walter Nolan the same way Mark likes Deion Walker. I saw a man among boys. I saw, like you all said, the upside and the pass rush is all there. He was ragdolling guys left and right. I think he has Pro Bowl, All-Pro potential. And I think him next to Jalen Carter would be a straight-up cheat code. He led all defensive players with 12 tackles for loss in SEC play last year. And he's right there with Deion Walker, Mark. I think he's got the best production in the best conference. And schematically, he's a guy that can play all over the place. I have him as my number 7 overall player in the draft. And I think his upside, what I've seen production-wise, I think he's the total package.
Yeah, he is willing to throw all kinds of pass rush counters. And his hand placement in those is inconsistent, and it weakens his pass rush repertoire. But if he pieces that together, the sky's the limit for him. He's still learning, I think, how to put all those physical gifts together. But I've got a first-round grade on him as well. Like I said, he's my number 3 overall interior defensive lineman. So, Dibes, let's spin over to your number 4. It is Darius Alexander. He is not in anybody else's top 5. So tell us what we're missing with Alexander.
Darius Alexander, man. Let me get him real quick. Where is he at? There he is. Darius Alexander, one of the biggest winners of the Senior Bowl. That Toledo. He comes from Toledo, the same school Quinyon Mitchell went. Doesn't have the same elite production as Quinyon Mitchell that we saw every single week there. So this is a bit of a projection pick. There's no doubt about it. He's got great size. He's got great athleticism. He's a big-time riser, and I think he's going to keep rising with the combine this week. Great quickness, great power, great quickness off the line of scrimmage, and a lot similar to a lot of these other guys like Derek Harmon we just talked about. I think he can play all along the defensive line, and I do think he's got Howie Roseman written all over him due to that athleticism, due to that ability to play inside and out. He's a way better run stopper right now. He's not a great pass rusher. That's going to come in time, but I do think developmental-wise, he's a 3-down lineman, whether that's defensive tackle or on the edge. So this guy is a mold of clay that I think Vic Fangio will fall in love with. And I do think this is one of the more realistic picks at number 32 out there. So I think a lot of these guys we talk about today I think there's going to be a run on defensive tackle, and I think Darius Alexander could be in that number 32 range. So he's a first-round pick for me.
All right, Mark, what's the double thumbs down here?
That would upset me if he was the 32nd pick by the Eagles. He's just too much of a tweener for me, I think, between D tackle and edge. And I also just this might be unfair, but like when a guy comes from Toledo, I want to turn the tape on and be like, oh my God, this guy is so much better than everybody else on the field, and they should have stepped in and not allowed this. That's kind of how it felt like with Quinyon Mitchell when you watched Quinyon Toledo tape. I didn't feel like that with Alexander. Like, he made big plays, but like, I guess I needed a little bit more wow, a little bit more production when you're playing at the MAC, when the MAC is worse than when it's ever been. It's probably not fair. He's going to tear up the combine. I know he's a good athlete. You guys, I feel like I always kind of come down a little hard on tweeners on the defensive line. I feel like I'm always kind of out on them. And yeah, I would be upset by Alexander at 32.
Yeah, I would too. We don't know how old he is. Another one of those, which is always bizarre.
He's old. He's like 24.
Yeah, he's a sixth-year senior, so he's old. And I just think for a sixth-year senior to lack as much consistency as he has and not really have much of a pass rush plan, it's mostly just bull rush or swim move. And yes, he was fourth in pass rush win rate. He was fourth in pressure rate. He was playing in the MAC, and so he could get away with that. I just don't think that's going to work at the NFL level. I think like there's a lot of tools there to be excited about. There's a lot of versatility. I think he can two-gap or be a penetration player. Like, he could literally fit with any roster. He was on Feldman's freak list, and so there's a lot to love there. But for a developmental guy that was a 6-year senior, I wouldn't be thrilled about that at 32 either. He was number 9 on my list of interior defensive linemen. I still have a second-round grade on him. So it's not like I dislike the guy. I just wouldn't like it at 32.
I have a low second-round grade on him, but it's a second-round grade.
He was my last second-round grade. So
be prepared.
Yeah.
That would upset me.
I would like it better than taking a right tackle, but that's a conversation for a different day. Okay, so let's.
It depends.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. Let's go to our number 3. Actually, we've talked about all of our number 3s at this point. I had Walter Nolan. Mark had Derek Harmon. Dibes had Kenneth Grant. So let's go to our number 2. Well, no, I'm going to call an audible here. So Dibes and I have the same number 1. Mark has him at 2. And then Mark has a number 1 that wasn't in any of our top 5s. And so let's go with the consensus guy, and then let's throw it to Mark for his guy. And so I'm going to talk about Dibes and I's number 1 guy, Mason Graham from Michigan. Graham was a two-way player in high school, played defensive line and offensive tackle. He was also a wrestler, and he only had one offer heading into his senior year of high school, but a breakout year put him on the map as a 4-star recruit, and he ended up at Michigan, where he played as a true freshman. In 2024, he was a first-team All-American. He's 6'3", 318 pounds, 21 and a half years old. He ranked third in pass rush win rate, first in run stop win rate. He had the number 1 defensive grade per PFF among defensive linemen, for what it's worth, which isn't much. He was 5th in pressure rate, 5th in sack rate, 1st in defensive stop rate. So this guy lit up the score. Didn't light up the scoreboard. He lit up the production board. Is that even a saying? He's a violent run defender with heavy hands. He deconstructs blocks and disrupts plays on the interior. He's a highly instinctual player. Like, he feels what's happening before you see it on the field. And I love my offensive linemen to have a wrestling background because it's that understanding of leverage and balance and how to torque guys out of position. And he definitely has that. He's a high motor player who has developed. He's shown growth year over year as a pass rusher. He's got a quick first step. He's very effective as a looper. He can bull rush. I cannot talk tonight. He can bull rush to collapse the pocket. I just think he can do it all. Now, he's still developing tools as a pass rusher, and his lack of length hurts him there. He's only 6'3". I don't think he has tremendously long arms. There's some pad level inconsistencies that when you add that on to the lack of prototypical arm length, it can cause issues anchoring against double teams. But he does stonewall solo blocks. And if you're talking from an Eagles perspective, how often is any defensive tackle playing next to Jalen Carter going to get double teamed? So I've got a first round grade on him. I mean, it'd be fantastic if the Eagles got him. It's not happening, though. This guy's going really high.
Yep. Yeah, he's my number 5 overall. Again, high floor kind of guy. I think there's a huge gap between my top guys and like a Mason Graham. Mason Graham's don't get me wrong, he's a playmaker. He's got the clutch gene. He's had big moments in college, without a doubt. But like you said, Shane, he's got a little bit of ways to go in certain areas, and I think he's got one of the highest floors in this draft.
All right. Mark, you have Mason Graham at number 2. And I think if you did not have the guy you have at one and you shifted yours up, our top 5 actually would have been identical. But what are your thoughts on Mason Graham?
Yeah, we have the same. My 2 through 5. My 2 through 5 is your 1 through 4 or something, I believe. So yeah, we're pretty close there. And Mason Graham, I think you guys nailed it. He's so safe. You will look smart for drafting him. Like, he's going to be a good player. I don't know if he's like got the size or athleticism to necessarily be like an all pro necessarily. And I think people I'm seeing, I mean, Dive said he's 5th. I'm seeing like 2nd, 3rd, top 5 grades for him. I don't have him that high. Like, to me, I have him, I think, a 10th or 11th overall. So, I mean, not a big difference between 5th and 10th. I think he could be like a long time, top 10 player at the position. So I'm splitting hairs, but it's the only thing I wanted to bring up is just, I don't see him as like Abdul Carter, Will Johnson, Travis Hunter, Ashton Genty necessarily. Yep. Like, he's a tier down from that for me.
All right. Well, Mark, let's get to your guy. I think, if people have followed other positional rankings and things across other podcast feed, this might be a name they haven't heard. This one might be a bit of a shocker to him. So talk to me about your number 1 overall defensive tackle.
It shouldn't be a shocker. He was a projected first-round pick until November, until you nerds came in and started talking about pad level. And, his pad level's too high. He's 6'7". Yeah, he's going to be higher than the other guys. Yes, it didn't matter when he got 90 run stops, 15 sacks, and 97 pressures in 3 seasons in the SEC. We all have guys every year that we're way too high on or way too low on compared to consensus, and sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. A lot of the time, I think I can wrap my head around the reason why I'm so high on someone where everybody else isn't. Gregory Rousseau comes to mind. And I understood he was, athletic mold, and he was totally just clay that you had to mold to become what you wanted to become, but he did have the 10 plus sacks that he had at Miami. So I was bought in with his body and with his talent. Deon Walker, I look at, and I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when people are he's 98th on PFF. He was like 20th a month ago, but that's a whole other conversation. He's a guy who had 8 sacks in the SEC last season. He's 8 sacks from the inside while being an incredible run stuffer that year. He definitely was worse this season. I don't think that Kentucky has a single other player on that defensive line who will ever take a snap in the NFL. And I think he was the entire focus of every offensive line that Kentucky went against. And against Ole Miss, he still took the game over and made Jackson Dart's life miserable. And Kentucky won that game as a massive underdog on the road in a game that they had no business winning. And I think Deon Walker was the biggest reason for that. And seeing what he did on the biggest stage, being 6'7", 340, having the pressure, even this year, a year that everybody is now writing him off as like a day 3 guy or like a late day 2 guy. He had 4 sacks and still had 18 hurries, still graded out pretty well as a run stopper. And I can't emphasize how elite he was in the 2023 season with 8 sacks, 39 hurries, graded out incredibly well as a run stuffer in that year, way better as a run stuffer that year. I think he played way too many snaps, honestly, as well. This is probably a guy who's probably better getting 60% of the snaps instead of the 100% of the snaps it felt like he was playing at Kentucky. I think this is one of those evaluations that I hear people on like the pad level. There's obviously things that you can like correct on it. I will buy the 6'7", 340 guy who showed the ability to stuff the run and sack the quarterback in the SEC when he was on a terrible defense with no other talent on the defensive line. It reminds me a little bit of like a defensive tackle George Karlaftis situation where I felt like George Karlaftis got downgraded when George Karlaftis saw so many double teams and was the focus of every offensive line that went up against Purdue was trying to take George Karlaftis out of the game. I think the same thing was happening in Kentucky against Deon Walker.
Yeah, with Deon Walker, I feel like you can see him fade as games progress, and to his credit, he played a lot of snaps, like you mentioned, 654 snaps 2 years ago, 540 this year at Kentucky. I just think playing high snap loads at his size is going to be hard. And I think you're not going to see him a lot on pass downs in the NFL. And maybe teams will just try to stick him more into like a run stuffer role. And he is,
He's an unbelievable pass rusher.
I think he's a better pass rusher than he is run defender. I think he's not a run defender.
And see, that's the thing. Like he's got the size of a nose tackle, but the quickness of like a 3 technique. And I don't know. He's just hard for me. He's hard for me to wrap my head around exactly how a team's going to have a plan for him, how you want him to play. And if you want him to be an interior pass rusher, you probably need to shed some weight so you can play more and try to increase your explosiveness, which he is explosive. It's not like he's not. He's really agile, especially for his size. He was just a hard guy for me to really nail down what I thought about.
Yeah, I think he's more of a project than Mark gives him credit. I think he's
raw.
He's very raw. But like Mark said, his power, the flashes, it's all there. You know, there are times I have watched him at Kentucky, and he is almost borderline hilarious to watch because he's so unstoppable. But on the other end, he was struggling at the Senior Bowl, and I'm a guy that I take good stock in that. And he was getting held. He was getting checked, and his lower body needs a lot of work. His handwork, his technique needs a lot of work. I'm not so sold on him in the run game. I agree, as a pass rusher in certain situations, he is elite, and it's going to be really interesting to see which team kind of rolls the dice on him. I think the tools are all there with the same kind of upside as a Walter Nolan, but that's why he's not in my top 5.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning he is only 20 years old right now.
I think it's definitely worth mentioning, and it's also worth mentioning that the day he got on campus at Kentucky, he got 535 snaps. Like as a freshman, he's played 3 years there, and he's played like 1,800 snaps. So I agree that he's raw, but he's played 1,800 snaps in the SEC. Like I do think that that's worth bringing up, and he's excelled as a pass rusher in most of those. So yeah, I think he fades throughout a game. I think you probably, I mean, a rotation doesn't have to be like a dirty word for a guy. Like the Eagles used to rotate Fletcher Cox a ton. Like Fletcher Cox, what was Fletcher Cox's like snap percentages over the years? Like that would be something I'd want to know, because there was, yeah, that's what I would guess. Like, I mean, Deion Walker was not playing 60% of the snaps in college, and I'd wager to say that if he was, you probably would have got the same sack production and the same pressure production, and you wouldn't have seen as many of the stats where he obviously looked tired.
Yeah. He's again, when it's all clicking and the light is on, he's amazing. Like a lot of these prospects we just talked about, it's just consistency.
This is a year for me, outside of my top 6, I feel like I have more guys either comically high or comically low compared to the industry standard. I'll say.
Wow, dude. It's that's across the board. Yeah, everywhere.
And there's some guys that'll make me go back and take a second look, and it'll make me go watch some more stuff, read some more information, watch some more of Dibe's fantastic scouting reports and videos all over this YouTube. But what I will say is some of those guys I'll relent on. Some of those guys that I was lower. Nick Scorton was a guy that I started out this process really low on, and I kind of rose myself. I read some more stuff, watched some more tape, and I got there eventually. I understood he's in my first round. I don't love him, but he's like 20s for me now. There's guys I'll relent on and bring up the rankings, and I'll bring down the rankings. There's a couple guys that I guess I'm just like staking my reputation to and being like, Deion Walker, I believe in you. I would bet on you. It's like Deion Walker, Benjamin Morrison, a couple guys that I will not, give up and let groupthink conquer me, I guess is what I'll say.
For the record, Deion Walker's number 34 on my big board. So like,
there you go. I like that. Love it.
That's how high I am on this class. I love this class.
By the way, he's 7th on my I'm in love. I need to meet Deion Walker. Someone needs to get me in touch with Deion Walker and his agent, and just get me on your payroll. I will be all over. I will go on every show that will have me, and they'll be like, "Hey, Mark, what do you think about the Phillies spring training?" I'm like, "Have you seen this Kentucky defensive lineman, Deion Walker? You heard about this guy?" That's all I want to talk about.
So Fletcher Cox played 58% of the snaps his first season in the NFL. And then
what about his prime?
He was at 78, 79, and 81% the next 3 years.
It's a little higher than I would have guessed, yeah.
75 the year after that. 2017, it was down to 58%. 2018, he played 79%. 2019, he played 78%, and then his final 4 years, he never got it. He was in the 60s every year again.
Yeah, upper 70s. But yeah, I mean, Fletcher Cox was incredibly valuable until the day he retired with those mid to upper 60 percentages. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah,
I think so.
I feel like he's going to be a guy that doesn't get in, and we're going to be like, "How is Fletcher Cox not a Hall of Famer?" for like 10 years.
There was a few years he was.
The Hall of Fame is a joke, so.
Yeah, all Hall of Fames are kind of a joke. We're on a bit of a tangent. Deion Walker will obviously be a Hall of Famer one day.
He's an interior defensive lineman with 70 career sacks. He's making the Hall of Fame.
And then second question, was 2024 Jalen Carter better than any version of Fletcher Cox we ever got?
Yes.
Probably.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, probably.
There's no doubt.
It's just
how much did Fletcher Cox get double teamed? Look at that.
I'm sure it was a ton.
You think so? As much as Jalen Carter?
I don't think it was as much as Carter, but I'm
Probably
sure
not as much as Carter.
Off the top of my head, I don't think it was as much.
I agree.
Yeah, probably not. But this I don't know why we're talking about this right now on this show. But,
Hey, it's the tackle show.
yeah. So his best year was 2018 when he had 101 pressures and 11 sacks. Let me compare that to Jalen Carter on the fly here. This is great podcasting. Jalen Carter this year had 75 pressures and 7 sacks, and he played 1,000 snaps. So Fletcher Cox played 250. Sorry. Fletcher Cox played 100 less snaps, had 25 more pressures, and 4 more sacks in 2018. 2018, Fletcher Cox was better than 2024 Jalen Carter. He was at least more productive.
Yeah, he was definitely more productive, but I think week in and week out, I feel like we walk out saying like the stat sheet didn't tell the tale of Jalen
I'm right
Carter.
there with Mark. Mark. That's recency bias for sure. But at the end of the day, like Jalen Carter was the engine that made this the best defensive line in football, period.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of the production for Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt and Milton Williams can be attributed to Jalen Carter in the same way it probably could in 2018 for some other guys too. It's just been a long time. I'd have to go back and really watch, but all that to say, let's talk about our honorable mentions for this year's draft instead of Fletcher Cox Hall of Fame. So, Mark, I'll throw it to you first. Were you going to talk about Tyleik Williams?
Yeah, I can. My 6, 7, 8 is all grouped together. Like I have Darius Alexander, Tyleik Williams, and TJ Sanders all exactly the same grade. Like I think it comes down to personal preference on what you want to see in what kind of defensive tackle you're bringing in, what scheme you're running, yada, yada, yada. I will say that the Tyleik Williams thing, I think he's like almost strictly a run stuffer. I don't know if you guys agree with that. I think you're drafting him pretty much to be like what Jordan Davis is right now. Hopefully play more snaps.
Can I read you my scheme fit round thing for him?
Yeah.
I said second round, even front A-gap defender who has a ton of potential, but for now is best relied on purely as a run defender, which gives him a high floor.
Yeah, I don't see anything that tells me he's going to be a pass rusher. Is that fair to say? Like, I think he's a total zero as a pass rusher.
Yeah,
there is some mystery around Tyleik Williams. I think, like some of these guys we talked about, there are flashes where he looks amazing, batting passes and things like that, and controlling the line. But I don't want to say high floor. I do think there's major upside with him.
His weight fluctuated a lot throughout college, which makes it hard to project him. I thought he had good quickness and agility. And he flashed the ability to penetrate as a pass rusher, but that was like older tape when he was at a lower weight. And so now it's like you're just a bull rusher and a run stuffer. And again, bull rushing just doesn't get you very far if that's all you've got at the NFL level.
Yeah, that's fair.
Mark, did you hold your finger up? Was there something else you wanted to say there?
It was actually another Deion Walker point. He mentioned that he was a good.
Nope, I'm cutting you off.
Mentioned he batted a lot of passes. Deion Walker batted the same amount of passes over the last 3 years. But no, it's just 6. I saw he had 6, and I know Deion Walker had 6 as well. But Tyleik Williams had 4 in 2023. It's a lot of batted passes in one season.
No, there were times in big games where he was dominant, and he deserves a shout out.
Yeah. All right. Dibes, what about you? Do you have an honorable mention that you want to shout out?
Yeah, a high riser, and I'm curious what you guys think about him. He wasn't on my radar until about 2 months ago, but his variance in this draft consensus-wise is all over the place. I've seen him first round. I've seen him day 3, and that's Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech. Really small, 6 foot, 290 pounds, doesn't have the size, not a lot of length. That's probably why he's going to fall to day 3. But his athleticism and pass rushing skills are very solid. He looks like a yet another high floor kind of situational pass rusher on that D line. He transferred to Vatek for his senior year, had 37 pressures last year, 3 sacks, 3 passes defensed. His efficiency was off the roof. And he's got a nice pass rush repertoire. He's got a lot of juice coming off the line. Yet another guy that could win a lot of hearts in Indy. So I just want to kind of throw him out. I do think he's probably like a late day 2, early day 3 guy, but definitely an interesting one to watch at the combine as a guy that could maybe make some noise.
Yeah. My honorable mention that I want to shout out is Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee. If you want to just talk pass rushing, this guy is first of all, he's 6'3", 315 pounds. He's 23 years old. But among the 11 defensive tackles, he ranked first in pass rush win rate. His 19.4% pressure rate is nearly double that of Mason Graham. His 3.6% sack rate is over double Mason Graham's. He ranked first across the board in those categories. Now, we don't need to talk about him being 11th in run stop rate, but he's got an incredibly quick first step. He explodes out of his stance. He's a gifted pass rusher, has a variety of pass rush moves, speed to power, bull rush, cross chop, rip, dip. It's all there. Good lateral agility. You can use him as a looper, and he has good bend when he's trying to get around guys. He's got impressive upper body strength. He has a high motor that is bordering on reckless, and sometimes it crosses that line to reckless. He was ejected from a game in 2023 for throwing a punch. He averaged a penalty every 38 snaps over his final 2 seasons. So, you could say he's poor discipline. You could say he's high motor, that you need to rein it in. Regardless, that's got to change. He's undeveloped as a run defender. He hasn't had more than 86 run defense snaps in any of the last 3 seasons. So they just don't put him on the field. He turns his shoulders when he's taking on blocks, which just makes it easy to wash him out. And I mentioned all of his pass rush moves, but he throws them with like a franticness, often with poor accuracy. And so he plays low snap counts. He's only averaged 237 snaps per season his final 3 years. His lack of technical refinement and low snap counts across 2 different coaching staffs, because he played at Arizona State before Tennessee, despite his obvious traits, is concerning. This is a guy you would think one of these coaching staffs would be like, man, let's get this guy on the field, and they didn't. So he's interesting. He is a good pass rusher with a tantalizing ceiling, but this is a boom bust guy. He does not have a high floor. This is a very low floor. He could end up being a great value for a team that takes him in the 2nd round. He could be a massive reach for a team that takes him in the 4th round. I have no idea how his career is going to play out, but somebody's going to be fascinated by this guy and take him earlier than you think.
I'm glad you brought up the pass rush snaps, because he didn't play that much.
No.
And that Tennessee pass rush was so good last year.
Speaking of a good pass rush, I forgot that besides Deion Walker, my other favorite player in this class is also a D tackle. It's J.J. Pegues from Ole Miss, who had 7 rushing touchdowns and would be the best fullback in the class if he was a fullback at 330 pounds.
Hey,
by the way,
the Eagles experimented with the fullback last year, so maybe he just plays DT and fullback for the Eagles.
I actually think he's not bad either. Like, I think he's not a bad D lineman. Like, I think I would take a chance on him on day 3. He moves so well for his size. It's
Mark,
yeah.
What's your thoughts on Howard Cross and Riley Mills?
I don't think.
Day 3?
Nah.
Oh, really?
I don't think Howard Cross is an NFL guy for sure. Personally.
Wow. Okay.
He also had a pretty. Riley Mills, I could see. Riley Mills really surprised me this year in terms of his pass rush ability. I guess he had 7 sacks the 2 years before it, and he had just as many hurries the year before. I'm probably underselling Riley Mills. 6'5", 295. He's got the size for it. I'm probably underselling Riley Mills. I guess I just didn't, when I was watching them all year, I wasn't like, oh, these guys are definitely going to be like NFL guys. I guess. Especially Cross. I think Cross is almost more of like a leader than he was like a football player at times on that Notre Dame team. So, but Riley Mills, yeah, probably like right outside the top 100.
Okay.
Am I crazy for thinking Pegues could be like a good D lineman?
Yeah, he's not on my radar.
I didn't get to watch him yet.
Yeah.
We probably don't need to. He'll just be someone I take in the 6th round of every mock draft we do.
Yes.
I know my son liked him because he's got a friend that's an Ole Miss fan and would always talk about him. So we would watch for him to score rushing touchdowns on Saturdays. So that would make Alan really happy because I had to break it to Alan that Josh Sweat's probably gone. And he wasn't happy about that because he loves the sack celebration. Like that's his favorite thing. He made me go vote for him for Super Bowl MVP during the game on my phone because he wanted him to win it. So he loves Josh Sweat.
Mark, maybe you can run the tush push in 2026.
I was just gonna say incorporate JJ Pegues, draft Dion Walker and JJ Pegues, and have them push Jalen. And it'll be this is not for this podcast, but how much worse would the Eagles be at the tush push if it was just a QB sneak? 2% worse?
Yeah, it wouldn't make much of a difference, I don't think.
No, I don't think that matters that much. I don't think Saquon gets that much force to begin with.
I think it like matters like 1 out of every like 80 times, like that push from behind. It feels like most of it is coming from Jalen in the front anyway.
Yeah, the most hilarious outcome is that the NFL bans pushing players and the Eagles just continue to run a QB sneak 40 times a year with a 9 or 85% success rate. That's the funniest outcome.
It's going to happen.
By the way,
it's definitely going to get banned.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this tweet or not, but where do you think the Eagles ranked in success rate on QB sneaks this year, league wide?
Oh, man.
I'm not sure.
I feel like it's lower than we think.
14th.
Yeah.
They just run it a lot. And what's funny is the Packers who complained about it had a 100% success rate on QB sneaks, but they only ran 5 of them. And their president is like, that play, it doesn't take skill. It's just an automatic first down. It's run it more than 5 times. It's
a fraudulent franchise taking advantage of a league that's transitioning to just soft. It's just a soft league, and it's ruining it. Just like the NBA, it's ruining what I used to love.
Something about the success rate of the tush push that I want to mention that always gets forgotten. People don't mention it draws the other team off sides like every other game.
Yeah. And Nick Sirianni's obsessed with that. Nick Sirianni's going to have to find a new way to try to draw teams off sides if that gets banned. Because it's literally his favorite thing in the world. But
he loves it.
All right, well, there you have it, guys. I know it doesn't sound like it, but this was the end of our defensive tackle ranking show. One more time, I'll run through it from 5 to 1. I have TJ Sanders, Kenneth Grant, Walter Noland, Derek Harmon, and Mason Graham. Mark has Kenneth Grant, Walter Noland, Derek Harmon, Mason Graham, and Dion Walker. Dibes 5 to 1 is Derek Harmon, Darius Alexander, Kenneth Grant, Walter Noland, and Mason Graham. And then Ryan, not here tonight, but his top 5 is TJ Sanders, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, and Mason Graham. So there you guys have it. A very deep class. Like Mark and Dives both set up front. One of those guys will be an Eagle. You can almost book it, especially if Milton Williams leaves in free agency. So study up on those defensive tackles. Flip on the Combine this weekend. Check it out. We'll be back next week. It is a 2-show week. We're going to be breaking down the Combine winners and losers. And I think it's tight ends. I can't remember. I'll have to check the spreadsheet. But we're going to be doing another position group ranking next week as well. So if you love the draft, watch the Combine this weekend. Keep it tuned here to the Eagles Pinpool Network. We'll have lots of stuff coming your way in the lead up to the draft. So Mark, Dibes, do either of you guys have any final thoughts you need to throw out there before we get out of here?
Vote for your favorite mock draft. We did a mock just before this of a 7-round Eagles mock, and make sure you vote for my squad. Those voting polls will come out in a little bit.
All right. Mark, anything you want to shout out before we get out of here?
No.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. That's great. You got the Fletcher Cox Hall of Fame talk. You got the tush push talk. Who knew what you were getting into when you got into our defensive tackle rankings? But we appreciate you guys for hanging out with us tonight, and we'll catch you guys next time.